The graduation address gives us the opportunity to hear from a distinguished member of our alumni community. And we're fortunate today, the address will be delivered by Ms. Caroline Elliott. Ms. Elliott is the Chief Operating Officer of fashion retail and manufacturing business Kukai, and is the Director of the National Film and Sound Archive of Australia, St John's Ambulance Australia, and Will Trust nominees. Ms. Elliott has extensive senior financial and commercial experience across the private, public and government sectors. She has a strong background in developing and delivering strategic programs with a particular focus on entrepreneurial startups and organisations going through business integration and growth transition phases. Throughout her career, she has worked in close collaboration with boards and senior management, attaining strong corporate governance and stakeholder management experience. I now have much pleasure in inviting Ms. Caroline Elliott to deliver the graduation address.
Deputy Chancellor Shane Bagul, Senior Pro-Vice Chancellor Professor Zlatko Skurbis, Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Business and Economics Professor Gary McGee, members of the faculty, ladies and gentlemen, and to you, the new graduates. First of all, congratulations to you all. I'm humbled to be asked to address you today as new graduates of Monash University's Faculty of Business and Economics. I'm also feeling somewhat old as I reflected back to the time I was sitting where you are today, contemplating the outside world that awaited. There were no mobile phones, no internet, no social media. In the early hours of the morning, the only outlet was Rage on Channel 2, as Netflix was not even a glint in someone's eye, and the Cold War had just come to an end. A very different world to the one that awaits you all today. But one thing that has not changed in the ensuing years is that what you have acquired today, your Monash University degree, is something that can never be taken away from you. And there are very few things in life you can say that about. No matter where you go or what you do or where you may travel in the world, your degree will always go with you. And what it says about you to potential employers, business partners, investors or collaborators is that in addition to your obvious academic acumen, you have discipline, self-motivation and dedication, an ability to apply yourself and learn, all attributes that will set you apart from some of your peers and place you at the top of the pack. You should all be incredibly proud of the achievement you have attained today. Now, where graduates of medicine or engineering will most likely become doctors or engineers in one discipline or another, business and economics graduates are found throughout the world in many different and often eclectic areas, as they tend to be able to take the principles of what they've learned and apply them to the multifaceted situations and arenas in many walks of life. From today, your opportunities abound, limited only by your ability to seek them out and apply yourself. This is, however, also a daunting prospect in itself. When I finished my degree with an accounting major, my main aim, like most of the accounting major grads, was to be chosen by one of the big 6 accounting firms, which would later become the Big 4. I went down this traditional path and joined what was Pricewaterhouse, now PricewaterhouseCoopers, as a graduate, and went on to become a chartered accountant. My somewhat traditional start to my career took a left turn when, after becoming chartered, I went to see my father, who was a prominent businessman at the time, to ask him where he thought my next best career move should be. Well, I must have done something really bad as a child, as he suggested I move to Romania and set up a dairy genetics business he was involved in. As a somewhat naive 23-year-old, I agreed to do so, and we flew 21 Holstein Friesian dairy bulls and a number of Angus cows to Bucharest and set up an artificial insemination business. I'm not sure what I did wrong that led me to be banished to the Eastern Bloc for that time, but it ended up being one of the most rewarding times of my life, which also gave me a global network of friends and contacts that I still have today. When I returned to Australia 3 years later, bolstered by the opportunities that a developing country presented, I set up a sushi manufacturing business with my younger brother, which we ran for 6 years. We quickly became the largest wholesaler of sushi products in Melbourne, supplying all the major events such as the Spring Racing Carnival and the Australian Open Tennis. We made over 17,000 pieces of sushi for the tennis on one of our largest days. Unfortunately, due to various circumstances, we had to put the business into voluntary administration, but managed to sell it as a going concern, and the brand is still alive today in the market. I refer to this time in my life as my character building years, but it also set me up with the skills and experience which would shape my career today. Since then, I've been a consulting CFO, CEO or COO for businesses going through some form of transition, being an investment, divestment or restructure, always for entrepreneurs. I've only had 4 main clients in the last 12 years, being a property developer, Dryzabone, the iconic Australian clothing brand, Opta, which is a global payments innovator, which we grew from a startup to a $1 billion company, and now at Cookai, which we have taken global in the last 12 months through the reverse acquisition of the Cookai parent company in France. And whilst there have been many stories recently of Australian retailers going to the wall, I'm very pleased to say that Cookai is backing the trend and thriving. So a varied career, which from the outside might look like it had no career path, but evolved as I took the challenges as they presented themselves to me. Whilst the companies I have worked for are dynamic and individual in nature, they share common characteristics. Having a financial overlay in all my decision-making in these roles has been a huge advantage. Your paths of choice are now a lot wider than mine were, and you would all be better placed to tell me about the jobs that await you, and I'm sure there are many I would struggle to understand, such as technology and social media transform the way we think, behave and consume. An influencer, a blogger, health and wellbeing coach now form part of everyday dialogue and are acceptable and indeed sought after careers. Crowdfunding, omni-channels, ride-sharing, e-commerce, disruption and experience now all form part of the business vernacular. So to those of you who have a planned career path, congratulations, but be open to the prospect of change. And for those of you who are finding the question of what's next challenging and confronting, try not to overthink it. Opportunities will present themselves, often in unexpected places, if you are open to it. I thought I would share with you today a couple of traits that I learned along the way that I also see in those I have worked for or with who have been successful, which may assist you on your path to success. Firstly, be aware that you do not know everything. Right now, you do not know what you don't know. And whilst you might think you probably know everything, or at least more than your parents, you actually don't. Insightfulness comes with experience. One of the first things I encountered at Cookai when I arrived was a young, vibrant, dedicated workforce, 90% of whom had progressed to head office from the retail shop floor. They had great skills, but they were limited as they only knew what they had learnt at Cookai. And because most of the department heads had also travelled the same path, they all had the ceiling of the Cookai way. While still incredibly successful, the company could not progress to be great without some outside influence to expand ideas and learning for people to develop. You need to be open to continuous learning, especially from those around you. Secondly, learn resilience. The journey of life and career is hard. You will have many wins, but will hit many hurdles along the way. The most successful people I've met on my journey have the resilience to ride the waves of ups and downs, and they have drawn on the strengths of what they have learnt from their challenges. When I put my sushi business into administration and subsequently sold it, I wanted to pull the doona over my head and hide from the world. But I didn't have that luxury. I had to take a deep breath and put myself back out there. And whilst in my eyes my business had failed, as I mentioned earlier, I still had my degree, I was still a chartered accountant. That had not been taken away from me. And what I found when I got back out into the market was that what I had learnt from my small business and its failure were highly sought after skills. I've seen the lack of resilience stifle people's development, and those who have it tend to flourish. Thirdly, start everything you do with good intent. Positivity is infectious. If you go into every meeting or situation with good intent, it's very hard for your counterparts to drive negativity. So even though you may start on a different page, if you have good intent to resolve an issue or a situation, you're more than likely going to end in a better place than from where you started. And finally, find great leaders to follow, because a great leader will want you to succeed. Great leaders recognise that the success of their team is paramount to their own. A great leader is someone you follow because you want to, not because you feel you have to. Because of what they represent, and therefore you respect them. And because of what they have done as they lead by example. Don't spend time flourishing under poor leadership. It will only stifle your own development. Now, just before I finish, I'd like to ask your indulgence to address the women graduates briefly. As a strong supporter of women and a leader of a predominantly female workforce of just over 2,000 women around the globe at Cook Eye. You are entering a time when you will constantly be told that you can, do and have it all. And indeed you can, but I'm not the first to say just not at the same time. You will need to make choices that will involve sacrifices in times in your career. Whilst I have often lent in, I've also made the choice at times to lean out, as we are not superhuman. Behind every successful woman, you'll often find a story of struggle to keep it all together, times of feeling overwhelmed, feelings of doing everything badly because we are our own toughest critics, and nearly always a strong network of support which allows them to do what they do. After I dropped my first child off to childcare when she was 8 months old, I called my mother from the car crying. I was a 40-year-old CFO of a fast-growing payments company, weeping uncontrollably, unsure whether I could actually get myself to work. She said to me, "You've made a decision, don't feel guilty about it, just make sure it's worthwhile." Wise words which I've called upon at many times along my journey when choices have been difficult. So to all of you, the graduates, I wish you all the very best of luck as you embark on this next chapter of your life, into a world that is evolving almost faster than you can take a breath. But have faith in your ability, be open to the prospect of change and continuous development. This is only the beginning. Thank you.